The year is 1764. The place, Gévaudan, a rugged mountainous region in south-central France. Imagine thick forests stretching for miles, valleys shrouded in mists, and farmland so remote the nearest town might be days away on foot. This was the kind of place where the woods were more than just scenery. They were alive, menacing, filled with predators that watched from the shadows. But in the summer of that year, something far worse than wolves began to stir, something that would go down in history as the Beast of Gévaudan. Over the course of 3 terrifying years, a predator unlike anything stalked the countryside. It struck in broad daylight, dragged victims from fields, tore them apart in gruesome fashion, and then vanished back into the wilderness without a trace. Dozens of men, women, and especially children fell prey to this monster. The attacks grew so relentless, so horrifying, that entire villages abandoned their farms. Families huddled together at night, praying to survive until morning. At its height, Gévaudan was less of a region of France and more of a hunting ground. And here's the most unsettling part. No one has ever agreed on exactly what the beast was. Some swore it was a wolf, but far larger than any wolf that had ever been seen in Europe. Others described it as a monstrous hybrid, its body like a lion or a bear, its head shaped like a hound, its eyes glowing with unnatural fury. Still, others whispered darker things, that the beast was no animal at all, but a demon, a curse, or even a werewolf unleashed upon the people for their sins. This wasn't just a local ghost story. It got so out of hand that word of the beast spread across Europe, even reaching the palace of King Louis XV himself. Soldiers were dispatched, hunters scoured the hills, famous marksmen swore they killed it, only for the killings to continue. For 3 years, Gévaudan bled under its shadow, and centuries later, we're still talking about it. So in this video, we're going to dive deep into the nightmare of the Beast of Gévaudan. We'll trace the first attacks, the terror that spread like wildfire, and the desperate hunt to bring it down. We'll look at the so-called slayings of the beast, and why they never seem to end the killings. And then we'll dig into the theories. Was it just a wolf, a pack of wolves, an exotic animal escaped from a nobleman's collection? Or was it something stranger? Something that defies explanation even today? Because here's the truth. The Beast of Gévaudan wasn't just a monster of teeth and claws. It was, and still is, a monster of mystery. And that's where our story begins. The summer of 1764 started like any other in Gévaudan. Sun spilling across the hills, children playing in the fields, villagers tending to their livestock. But on June 30th, that ordinary calm shattered. Jeanne Boulet, a 14-year-old girl, was found near the village of Les Hubats. Her body told a story so horrifying that the villagers could barely comprehend it. Her throat torn out, her body partially consumed. Wolves were known in the region, but no wolf had ever attacked with such ferocity. The shock spread through the community like wildfire. Families locked their doors, farmers abandoned their fields, and whispers of a monstrous predator began to circulate. Weeks passed, and the killings continued. The beast seemed to have a cruel preference for the vulnerable. Women and children were the targets, often found alone in forests or tending to livestock far from the safety of their villages. Their bodies bore savage wounds, deep gashes, torn flesh, and sometimes signs of partial consumption. Each attack was a puzzle. It was almost as if the beast took deliberate aim at the defenseless, studying them before striking. Witnesses began to speak. They described a creature unlike any wolf, enormous, muscular, reddish-brown, with a dark stripe along its back, and eyes that seemed to burn with a terrible intelligence. Some spoke of a long, thick tail, unlike anything they had ever seen. Survivors' accounts painted a chilling picture. A predator with the speed of a wolf, the strength of a bear, and the cunning of a human mind. By the winter of 1764, the attacks had escalated further. Reports came in from villages across the region. Entire families were left devastated. Neighbors whispered of curses, and rumors began to mix with terror. Was this a wolf, a hyena, or some other third thing? Or perhaps a demon sent to punish the villagers for their sins? One of the earliest moments of human resistance came in January 1765 near the village of Villaret. 7 children tending to a herd of cattle in the bitter cold were suddenly confronted by the beast. But instead of fleeing in panic, They banded together. Armed only with sticks, they formed a circle, shouting and prodding the creature back into the woods. Against all odds, the beast retreated. These 7 children became a symbol of courage, a flicker of hope in an otherwise hopeless situation. Months later, in August 1765, Marie-Jeanne Vallée, later remembered as the Maid of Gévaudan, had her encounter with the beast at the River Degé. Armed only with a makeshift spear, a bayonet attached to a staff, she faced the monster head-on. When it leaped at her, she struck true, wounding it and forcing it to retreat. Her bravery echoed across the region, giving villagers a glimpse that perhaps they could fight back. But sadly, not all stories ended in survival. Many attacks were swift and lethal, leaving families shattered and communities paralyzed by fear. Jacques Portefeuille, a young shepherd, became another figure of courage when he and a group of children faced the beast. Using stones and whatever rudimentary tools they could grab, they managed to drive the creature away. King Louis XV heard of their bravery and rewarded the children, a rare moment of royal acknowledgement during a time of relentless horror. The pattern of the beast became horrifyingly clear. It was unpredictable, strategic, and terrifyingly efficient. It didn't just roam the forests, it chose its victims carefully, striking during daylight, sometimes in open fields. It evaded hunters and soldiers alike, and stories emerged of it being shot at close range, only to escape unharmed. By the end of 1765, the beast's shadow had fallen over the entire province. Families barricaded themselves indoors. Shepherds refused to tend to livestock. Villages held midnight prayers while the forest echoed with the absence of the usual calm. Everywhere, there was fear, and everywhere, the question hung in the air. What kind of creature could commit such atrocities and still remain unseen? And as the death toll rose, so did the speculation. Some whispered that more than one beast roamed the hills, perhaps a pack working in unison. Others thought the attacks were divine punishment, and still others feared the unthinkable, that a human hand, cunning and cruel, was orchestrating the carnage. Over the next 3 years, the attacks became the very heartbeat of Gévaudan's terror. Victims, survivors, and witnesses left behind stories, fragments that, when pieced together, revealed a predator so intelligent, so brutal, it challenged everything the people knew about nature. The question lingered in every village, in every home, and in every mind. How do you fight something that seems to understand you and wants to kill you? The people of Gévaudan weren't just afraid, they were obsessed. Every villager had a story of the beast, a terrifying encounter, or a close call that haunted them long after. And yet, as the attacks continued, a clearer picture began to emerge, not of a wolf, not of a wild dog, but something entirely unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Survivors' accounts repeated in hushed tones around hearths and marketplaces, as they began to form a composite image of the creature. And what people described would chill anyone's blood. First, there was its size. Witnesses consistently said it was far larger than any wolf they had ever seen. Some compared it to a calf, others to a young horse. Its muscular frame radiated strength, its very presence a force that could crush a man if it so chose. Its fur was reddish-brown, sometimes tawny, often with a dark stripe running along its back. One detail that struck many observers was the long, thick tail, sometimes described as tufted or fringed like a lion's, a feature utterly unlike any native predator. And then there was the head. Broad snout, powerful jaws, lined with sharp, prominent teeth, small rounded ears, and eyes that glowed or burned with an uncanny light. Witnesses claimed its gaze almost seemed intelligent, calculating, like it could read their thoughts before striking. Legs and paws were just as terrifying. Strong, capable of incredible speed, with claws that could tear through flesh and bone. Some even suggested its hind legs were slightly longer than its front, giving it a peculiar, almost hyena-like gait, and in rare sightings, it could even stand upright for a moment, surveying its surroundings with deliberate attention. But it wasn't just the beast's appearance that set it apart, it was its behavior. Unlike wolves, which typically avoided humans, the beast hunted people deliberately. Daylight offered no protection. Open fields where one would feel safest became killing grounds. Survivors described it as cunning, almost intelligent. It seemed to stalk its prey using the terrain to its advantage, slipping away from traps and ambushes as though it anticipated every move. Some accounts made it almost supernatural. People claimed the creature survived gunshots, vanished suddenly into the mists, or appeared to have human-like hands, just enough to make them question whether it was entirely of this world or not. And in a time when belief in werewolves and divine punishment was common, these stories only fueled panic. Yet even amidst terror, courage appeared. Those who encountered the beast and survived often did so through quick thinking, resourcefulness, or sheer luck. Marie-Jeanne Vallée, armed with only a spear, wounded the beast at the rivers de Gé. Young shepherds like Jacques Portefeuille managed to fend it off with stones and rudimentary weapons. These moments of bravery punctuated the fear, proving that while the beast was formidable, it was not invincible. And still the descriptions conflicted. Some said it had a sloping back like a hyena, others swore it had glowing eyes or could vanish into thin air. Perhaps most chilling were the reports suggesting a human element, that its intelligence, audacity, and focus might be more than instinctual, hinting at something darker, something that blurred the line between man and monster. As villagers told their stories, the image of the beast grew more vivid and terrifying. Its appearance, its strategy, its sheer audacity became the stuff of legend. And for those living in Gévaudan, every shadow in the forest, every rustle in the underbrush, every distant howl could mean only one thing: the beast was near. By weaving together these accounts, we began to understand why the people of Gévaudan were gripped with fear. The beast wasn't just a predator, it was an enigma, a living nightmare, a creature that defied understanding, leaving destruction in its wake and questions in the minds of all who survived. And with that, the stage is set for the full reign of terror, the attacks that would terrorize an entire province and challenge the very authority of the crown itself. By the summer of 1764, the idyllic countryside of Gévaudan had transformed into a land of fear. The attacks weren't just isolated incidents, they were the beginnings of a reign of terror that would span 3 years, leaving over 60 victims and countless lives permanently changed. And to truly understand the gravity of the beast's impact, we have to consider the world it invaded. France in the mid-18th century was a nation of contrasts. Paris and other urban centers were hubs of enlightenment, thought, scientific inquiry, and cultural refinement, yet much of the countryside, particularly remote provinces like Gévaudan, remained isolated, traditional, and deeply connected to the rhythms of the land. Life in Gévaudan was hard and precarious. Peasants eked out a living through subsistence farming and tending livestock. Wolves were a familiar threat, but never before had humans faced a predator that seemed smarter, larger, and more relentless than any natural foe. Education was limited, oral tradition dominated. Superstition and folklore intertwined with daily life, creating fertile ground for fear and rumor. When the first attack was reported, the brutal death of 14-year-old Jeanne Boulet on June 30th, 1764, villagers were shaken. Her throat had been ripped out, her body partially consumed. While wolves occasionally do attack humans, the ferocity of this act was unprecedented, sending ripples of terror across the province. Over the following months, a pattern emerged. Victims were almost exclusively women and children, often found in open fields or along isolated forest paths. The creature seemed to target the most vulnerable, striking with terrifying precision and leaving villagers feeling powerless. Fields went untended, livestock roamed free, and even the most courageous citizens hesitated to step outside after dark. News of these attacks did not stay in Gévaudan. The King of France, Louis XV, became aware of the crisis. To the royal court, the beast was more than a local tragedy. It was a threat to the stability and prestige of the monarchy itself. A creature terrorizing an entire province made it appear that the king could not protect his subjects, undermining both authority and legitimacy. In a France still rigidly hierarchical, that was unacceptable. So in response, Louis XV dispatched his finest hunters, and I know I'm going to get this wrong, but I'm going to do my best. First came Jean-Charles Marc-Antoine Famessel d'Anneval, a wolf hunter from Normandy. He was accompanied by his son, Jean-Francois, and a team of skilled trackers with trained hounds. Their arrival brought hope to the terrorized villagers, yet the beast remained elusive, evading traps and ambushes time and time again. Even the most skilled men and dogs could not overcome its cunning. Frustration mounted, the attacks continued, the death toll rose, and the royal huntsman's failures became public knowledge. In 1765, Louis XV made a bold move, appointing Francois Antoine the lieutenant of the hunt and first gun bearer to take command. Wait, I think I've been saying it wrong. I think it's Antoine. Let me know in the comments. Antoine brought military discipline, royal soldiers, and the finest hunting dogs in France. He organized large-scale drives across forests and valleys, meticulously studying eyewitness reports to anticipate the beast's movements. The hunt for the beast captured national attention. Newspapers chronicled every sighting and skirmish. The creature, already terrifying, became a symbol of chaos, challenging not only the rural communities but the monarchy itself. Louis XV declared Antoine's kill of a large wolf in September 1765 a triumph, yet the attacks soon resumed, leaving villagers questioning whether the royal intervention had achieved anything at all. Religion also played a critical role. The Catholic Church offered both guidance and interpretation, framing the beast as divine punishment for sins. Sermons urged repentance, processions and blessings were conducted, and relics paraded through towns. The beast was no longer only a predator, it was a spiritual test, a visible sign of humanity's failings. Villagers looked to faith for protection when no physical measure could ensure safety. And yet, despite all of this, the mystery remained unsolved. The beast's identity, its origins, its nature, wolf, hybrid, escaped exotic animal, or some other third thing, unknown. Every failure of royal huntsmen, every new attack only deepened both fear and fascination. The reign of terror in Gévaudan offers a window into 18th century France at a crossroads. It was a world where superstition and reason collided, where rural isolation met the gaze of a powerful monarchy, and where ordinary people confronted a force that seemed to exist outside natural law. And you know, this whole thing is a story of a province under siege, of a king challenged by forces he could not control, and of communities grappling with fear, courage, and the unknown. It sets the stage for the final confrontation, the hunt that would bring a man a silver bullet, and perhaps the end of the beast itself. By 1767, the people of Gévaudan were exhausted, terrified, and desperate. 3 years of terror had taken a profound toll in the province. Families lived in constant fear. People whispered of supernatural forces, werewolves, demons, divine wrath. It all grew louder with each new attack. Even the king's finest hunters had failed. The beast had outsmarted them all. Into this tense and anxious world stepped Jean Chastel, a local farmer and innkeeper from La Besserie Sainte-Marie. Chastel was an enigmatic figure. Known for his devout Catholic faith, he often carried his prayer book and participated in religious observances. Despite his solitary habits and conflicts with authority, he had been arrested at one point by Captain Dumont for allegedly interfering with the royal hunts, and this made some villagers suspicious. Could this quiet man be anything more than he seemed? Chastel's knowledge of the land and its force was unmatched. Unlike the royal huntsman, he did not rely solely on brute force or trained hounds. He understood the rhythms of the countryside, the secret paths through forests, and the habits of the predator that had eluded everyone. In June 1767, a large hunt was organized by the Marquis d'Apcher. Hunters, soldiers, and villagers spread out across the forests and hills, hoping to finally track down the beast. Chastel joined this effort, but he had a plan of his own. And this is where it gets really interesting. According to legend, Chastel prepared silver bullets, possibly by melting down religious metals, which were then blessed by a priest. Silver was believed to be a purifying metal, capable of defeating evil and even mythical creatures like werewolves. Whether out of superstition, faith, or strategy, Chastel's preparation set the stage for a confrontation unlike any the province had ever seen. On June 19, 1767, the beast appeared. Unlike previous attacks, it approached Chastel calmly, almost unnaturally so, ignoring the usual frenzy and aggression that had marked its encounters with humans. Some historians speculate that familiarity with the area, or perhaps an instinctual recognition, played a role in its behavior. Chastel remained calm, holding his prayer book until the moment was right. Then, with precision and determination, he raised his firearm and fired. The silver bullet struck true, and the beast fell to the ground. Those nearby rushed to Chastel's side and found him standing over the creature, a final dramatic confrontation that became the stuff of legend. Examination of the beast revealed unusual characteristics. It resembled a wolf but had significant anomalies. A broad chest, reddish-gray fur with a dark stripe along its back, and unusually large teeth and claws. Reports also noted human bones in its stomach, confirming that this was indeed the killer that had terrorized Gévaudan for years. The carcass was sent to Versailles, but decay had obscured many details, leaving some questions forever unanswered. And like you would imagine, Chastel's act was hailed as a heroic triumph, but controversy lingered. Villagers and historians alike debated. Why did the beast approach him without any hostility? Did Chastel have prior knowledge or a connection to the creature? And of course, the story of the silver bullet added a supernatural aura to the tale, linking Chastel's courage with faith and folklore. In the aftermath, Chastel became both a symbol of hope and a figure of intrigue. To some, he was a devout protector, using faith and skill to confront an unimaginable threat. To others, he was a cunning man who orchestrated events to gain fame or perhaps settle scores within the community. Regardless of the truth, his actions brought the beast's reign of terror to an end, at least in the eyes of the people of Gévaudan. But the story did not stop there. Chastel's hunt and the death of the beast also fed the legend, blending fact with myth. Tales of the silver bullet, divine intervention, and the mysterious calm of the creature created a narrative that has fascinated historians, storytellers, and cryptid enthusiasts for centuries. The final hunt was more than a kill. It was a culmination of fear, bravery, faith, and mystery, all converging in a single unforgettable moment. The legend of Jean Chastel and the Beast of Gévaudan invites us to reflect on the intersection of human courage and the unknown, and folklore. It reminds us that sometimes facing darkness requires more than strength. It requires knowledge, preparation, and perhaps a touch of faith. Now, let's get into what this thing could have been. With the beast finally slain by Jean Chastel, the people of Gévaudan could breathe a tentative sigh of relief. The attacks had stopped, or at least there were no further confirmed killings, yet even in the absence of terror, questions lingered. What exactly had been stalking the forests and fields of south-central France for 3 years, and why had it behaved in such an extraordinary manner? The simplest theory, and one that remains widely accepted among historians, is that the beast was an enormous wolf, perhaps even a wolf-dog hybrid. Wolves were common in 18th century France, and while attacks on humans were rare, they were not unheard of. A hybrid might explain the creature's unusual size, strength, and boldness around humans, as well as its ability to evade the most skilled hunters. Yet even this theory leaves room for mystery. Witnesses consistently describe the beast as far larger than ordinary wolves, with features and behaviors that defied expectations. Its aggression, intelligence, and boldness were unparalleled, sparking speculation that this was not a typical predator at all. Some believe the beast to be an exotic animal. Hyenas, lions, and other native predators had occasionally been brought to France by travelers or aristocrats, so perhaps one of them could have escaped or been released into the forests of Gévaudan. This theory adds a tantalizing element of the unknown, suggesting that the terror may have come from far beyond the familiar landscapes of France. Others embraced a darker interpretation. Perhaps the beast was not an animal at all. Some theorize that the killings were the work of a human predator, a person using the legend of a monster to hide their crimes. The calculated nature of the attacks, the way the creature seemed to elude entire hunting parties, and the focus on vulnerable victims lent weight to this unnerving possibility. And of course, many others held to the supernatural theories. The beast seemingly invincible, its audacity in attacking humans in broad daylight, and tales of glowing eyes, or a creature that vanished mysteriously, all fueled legends of werewolves or divine punishment. In a deeply religious society, it was easy to interpret these attacks as a manifestation of God's wrath, or as the work of a demon. The blending of fact, fear, and faith created a narrative that was impossible to separate from myth. Modern researchers have revisited the case with forensic analysis and historical scrutiny, attempting to match reported wounds with known animal behavior. Some studies support the wolf or hybrid theory, while others note inconsistencies that leave room for alternative explanations. Psychological research also suggests that mass fear and social panic likely amplified perceptions, leading eyewitnesses to embellish details or misidentify the creature. Even when confronted with extraordinary danger, human memory and perception are influenced by emotion and expectation. And also, the cultural and historical context is equally important. Gévaudan in the 1760s was a province of isolation, superstition, and had religion deeply embedded within its society. The attacks came at a time when the monarchy's authority was visible but stretched, and the local population's trust in outside help was tenuous. The beast became more than a predator. It became a symbol reflecting fear, uncertainty, and the tension between human civilization and the untamed natural world. Ultimately, the enduring mystery of the Beast of Gévaudan lies in the fact that no single explanation satisfies every detail. Whether it was a wolf, a hybrid, an exotic escapee, a human killer, or even a supernatural being, the legend continues to capture imaginations. The tale of the beast invites us to ponder the boundaries between myth and reality. It challenges us to consider the extraordinary in a world that often seeks simple answers. And perhaps most intriguingly, it reminds us that some mysteries, no matter how thoroughly examined, may never fully be solved, leaving space for wonder and speculation. Even today, centuries later, the forest of Gévaudan holds the memory of the beast. Its legend has inspired books, films, and ongoing debate. The question remains, though, what truly roamed those hills? And will we ever know? Or is the mystery itself part of the power that keeps the story alive? And this is the reason that I really want to talk about this story, because the Beast of Gévaudan wasn't just a story told around a fire, it was real. Over 3 terrifying years, it claimed the lives of mothers, children, and villagers, leaving entire communities in fear that no imagination could truly capture. This wasn't folklore invented for a fright. It was lived reality, and the people of Gévaudan knew it. Its size, strength, and audacity were enough to strike terror even into the bravest villagers. Survivors insisted it moved with intelligence, stalking victims, evading traps, and seeming to understand human vulnerabilities. These weren't fanciful accounts. They were people describing what they had truly faced. So, what was it? What kind of creature could leave such devastation behind? Modern research and historical records suggest several possibilities. The most widely accepted theory is that the beast was a wolf or perhaps a wolf-dog hybrid. Wolves were common in 18th century France, yet attacks on humans of this magnitude were extraordinarily rare. A hybrid might explain its unusual size, boldness, and strategic hunting patterns. Its fearlessness around humans could have been a product of domestication or a creature simply unlike anything the villagers had ever encountered. And you know what, now that I think about it, what if it was Jean Chastel's pet, and that's why it was so calm? That's why it walked up to him and it was just chilling. You know, just kind of jumping onto that thought train. If Jean Chastel had raised this thing, let's just say it was some sort of hyena. And let's say he raised this thing from when it was little. Eventually it's going to get big and it's going to have to hunt. So it goes out and starts hunting, but then it comes back and it starts hunting people because it realizes it's a lot easier to stalk a child than it is, you know, whatever wildlife is out there. Just food for thought. Other theories propose that the beast was an exotic animal brought into France by traveling aristocrats or merchants. Some witnesses described a sloping back and a gait reminiscent of a hyena, while others mention reddish-gray fur with a tufted tail, leading to speculation about young lions or other exotic cats. These escaped predators, far from their native habitats, could have survived temporarily in the wild, hunting with a ferocity and audacity that frightened even seasoned hunters. There's also the unsettling idea that human involvement may have played a role. Some accounts suggest that the beast's attacks were too deliberate and cunning to be solely animal-driven. So could someone have orchestrated this terror using an animal or a pack to mask their own crimes? While chilling, it is a theory that forces us to confront the darker possibilities of human nature, which unfortunately are all too common. And of course, there's the realm of supernatural. For the villagers of Gévaudan, the beast could have been a loup-garou, or a werewolf, or even a manifestation of divine punishment. Stories of glowing eyes, apparent immunity to bullets, and seemingly intelligent behavior fueled these beliefs. Even now, these elements remained a compelling part of the legend, illustrating how extraordinary events can intertwine with fear, faith, and folklore. What's fascinating is that all of these possibilities might coexist. Perhaps it was a wolf-dog hybrid, unusually large and aggressive, possibly supplemented by human cunning, or even escaped exotic predators that added to its strangeness. Whatever it truly was, one thing is certain. This creature terrorized a region in a way no ordinary predator could. But now I want to know what you think. We've traced the beast through every attack, every encounter, and every heroic act. We've examined how royal hunts unfolded, how villagers adapted in terror, and how the church interpreted the beast as a symbol of divine retribution. And even now, centuries later, the mystery endures. Figures like Marie-Jeanne Vallée, Jacques Petitfol, and Jean Chastel embody the courage of ordinary people standing against extraordinary fear. Their bravery reminds us that human courage and ingenuity often meet the unknown head-on, and even in situations that seem hopeless. So, what do you think? Was the beast simply a giant wolf, a hybrid, or some other third thing? Could a human have been involved, or was it something that defies explanation entirely? Drop a comment below with your theory, your interpretation, or even what part of the story fascinated you the most. Could a creature like the beast still exist today, hidden in remote forests? Or was this a singular event shaped by the time, place, and people of 18th century France? I mean, history gives us clues, but no definitive answers, and perhaps that is exactly why the Beast of Gévaudan continues to captivate us. It's a legend that reminds us that even in a world we think we understand, true mysteries can exist. It challenges us to face the unknown with curiosity and respect and a sense of wonder. The beast wasn't just a legend. It was real. Its terror, the bravery it inspired, and the stories that have survived through centuries remind us that some mysteries are too extraordinary to ever truly fade. The forest of Gévaudan may be quiet now, but the shadow of that creature lives on in our imagination, a symbol of fear, fascination, and absolute mystery. And where mystery lies, adventure awaits.